I don't have much time left. My body knows. The silence in this house knows. And before I go, there's one thing, just one, I need to tell you. It's not a story about glory or love or even pain. It's a truth I learned too late. A mistake that quietly stole years from me. And if you're still breathing, still busy, still running, please stop. Just long enough to hear this. Because if you can avoid what I couldn't, maybe your ending won't taste like regret. My name is Hattie, and I'm 84 years old. The doctors say my heart is slowing, and I can feel it, not in fear, but in finality. I sit in this quiet room where the clock ticks louder than it used to, and I think a lot about what I've done, and what I didn't. I wasn't famous, I didn't build empires, but I lived a full life, full of noise, of love, of rushing. And still, there's one thing I never made peace with. One thing I wish someone had warned me about before it was too late. So I'm speaking now, not to complain or confess, but to try, just maybe, to reach you in time. Because if my story can save even one person from the silence I carry, then it will have been worth it. It was a Tuesday. Not that the day matters, but it's funny how certain moments tattoo themselves into the smallest details, like the way the sunlight stretched across my kitchen table, or how the faucet kept dripping no matter how tightly I turned it. I was pouring myself a cup of tea when my hand trembled a little, just enough to make me stop. At first I thought it was nothing, just age, just a tired day. But something about that moment, it settled into me differently. It felt like a whisper. Not from outside, but from somewhere inside I hadn't heard in years. A whisper that said, "You're running out of time." It wasn't fear exactly. It wasn't even sadness. It was recognition. As if my body and soul were finally syncing up and agreeing. We're nearing the edge now. That night, I sat by my bedroom window longer than usual. I didn't turn on the lamp. I let the dark in. I watched the streetlights blink on one by one, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like I had all the tomorrows in the world. My to-do lists didn't matter. The dishes in the sink didn't matter. Even the missed calls and unanswered messages faded into the background. All that remained was a simple, quiet knowing. Most of my life had already been lived. The strangest part was how calm it made me feel. Not peaceful, not yet, but still. Still enough to begin seeing things for what they were. Still enough to hear the ticking of every moment I had wasted convincing myself I had time to spare. I realized I had lived as though I was invincible, immortal. We all do, don't we? We say we'll call them tomorrow, fix it next week, rest once the work is done. But that night, I realized time doesn't wait for apologies or clarity. It just moves, softly, without permission. I thought about all the things I hadn't done. Not the big dreams. I'd long accepted that not all of them were meant to come true. No, I mourned the small things. The afternoon naps I never allowed myself. The words of love I held back. The days I filled with busyness, just so I wouldn't have to feel too deeply. I had traded stillness for productivity, depth for distraction. And now, here I was, facing the last chapters of my life, wondering if I had even read the middle ones fully. I don't tell you this to scare you. I tell you because I wish someone had told me. I wish someone had shaken my shoulders gently and said, "Hattie, slow down. Look around. This is it. Not tomorrow. Not when everything's perfect. Now." The ordinary, messy, in-between moments you rush through, they're the ones you'll long for when the silence finally settles in. I didn't realize my time was running out because I was too busy pretending I had more of it. And if I could go back to that Tuesday, to the trembling teacup, I'd put the kettle down and sit with myself. I'd listen. I'd honor the whisper before it became a roar. Because once you realize time isn't infinite, every second becomes holy. So if your hands are still steady and your heart still beats without struggle, don't wait for the whisper. Don't wait for the Tuesday. Begin now. Begin by noticing. Begin by living, not just surviving. That's the lesson I learned far too late. And it's the one I pray you receive while there's still enough time left to do something beautiful with it. I didn't notice the regret at first. It wasn't loud or obvious. It didn't come crashing into my life like some dramatic revelation. No, it crept in, soft, slow, and silent. It hid in the background, behind all the roles I played and the responsibilities I carried. It was in the way I'd pause before answering a question honestly, in the quiet ache I'd feel after saying I'm fine for the 100th time, even when I wasn't. Regret isn't always a scream. Sometimes it's a hum, low and constant, that follows you around until you finally stop and ask, what is that sound? Mine began in small decisions, choosing to stay quiet when I should have spoken up, saying yes when my whole body whispered no, delaying joy for the sake of appearances, prioritizing what looked good over what felt right. I thought I was doing the responsible thing, the mature thing. But over the years, that responsibility started to weigh like a stone in my chest. And now, with more past than future, I can see clearly what it truly was. Fear in disguise, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being too much or not enough. Regret doesn't come from the things I did. It comes from what I didn't allow myself to feel, the moments I numbed out, the tears I swallowed, the dreams I put on a shelf and never dared to revisit. I told myself I had time to be bold, time to rest, time to be fully, unapologetically me. But time slipped through my fingers while I was busy trying to hold everything else together. Now I sit in this stillness, and the quiet is no longer gentle. It echoes. It shows me all the conversations I never had, especially the ones with myself. I never asked what I truly wanted. I never gave myself permission to disappoint others if it meant being true to who I was. I didn't realize, until much later, that regret isn't about a single decision. It's the accumulation of all the times you abandon yourself for the sake of peace that isn't even real. There were people I loved deeply, but never told. Words I rehearsed, but never spoke. Paths I saw, but never walked because they didn't fit the life I had built. And now, those untaken roads visit me in dreams, not to punish me, but to remind me that even silence has consequences, that even comfort can be a kind of prison. If I could offer you anything from this quiet room, it would be this. Regret doesn't come all at once. It grows slowly, like ivy on a wall, until one day it covers everything. And by then, it's hard to find the door you forgot you built for yourself. So listen, not just to me, but to you. To that small voice you keep pushing aside. It knows things you've forgotten. It remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. Follow it, even if it scares you, even if it means being seen. Because nothing is heavier than the silence of a life half-lived. There's something no one ever tells you about choosing others before yourself. How easy it is to mistake that pattern for love. For most of my life, I thought putting everyone else first was what made me good. A good wife, a good mother, a good daughter, a good friend. I said yes even when I was exhausted. I stayed up late to help others, woke up early to meet their needs, and made my own desires small so no one else would feel uncomfortable. And for a while, it looked like I was thriving. People admired me. They called me strong, selfless, reliable. But no one asked if I was okay, and I never offered the truth. The truth was I was tired, not just in my body, but in my soul. I had given away so many pieces of myself that there were days I couldn't even hear my own thoughts. I became so good at caretaking that I forgot what it felt like to be cared for. I wore other people's needs like a second skin, and slowly, without realizing it, I disappeared beneath them. What hurt the most wasn't the giving, it was the invisibility that followed. When you constantly choose others over yourself, they start to believe you don't have needs of your own. They stop asking how you're doing. They assume you're always okay because that's what you've shown them, and it becomes a cycle. The more you give, the less you're seen. The more you bend, the less anyone notices when you break. I thought love meant sacrifice, I thought loyalty meant silence. I believed that setting boundaries was selfish and saying no was cold. But what I didn't understand was that every time I ignored myself, I taught others to do the same. And now, near the end, I can feel the cost. It's not just in my aching bones or quiet nights. It's in the absence of my own voice in the story of my life. There were dreams I never chased because someone else needed me. There were places I longed to go, but convinced myself I didn't deserve. There were days I needed help and stayed silent, waiting for someone to notice I was drowning behind my smile. And the truth is, no one came. Because I never let them see the storm. If I could go back, I wouldn't stop giving. But I'd give to myself too. I'd learn to hold both, the love I had for others and the love I owed myself. I'd say no without guilt. I'd ask for help without shame. I'd rest without apology. Because you cannot pour from a cup that's always empty. And you cannot keep choosing others if doing so means constantly abandoning yourself. So if you find yourself in that place, always putting yourself last, please hear me. You matter too. Your needs are real. Your voice deserves to be heard, even if it shakes. Don't wait until the end to realize that self-sacrifice without self-love is not noble. It's a slow erosion. And you, dear one, deserve to exist in your own life fully, not just as a support beam in someone else's. I remember the day clearly, though it looked like any other. The laundry was folded neatly on the couch, a chicken soup simmered on the stove, and the television played softly in the background. It was just another Tuesday, but something about it still haunts me. I had received a call from my sister earlier that day. She invited me to visit, just for the weekend, said she missed my laugh and wanted to sit in the garden like we used to. And I said no. I said, maybe next week, because I had chores to finish, bills to pay, errands to run. Because I told myself there would always be time, but there wasn't. She passed 2 weeks later, unexpected, fast, a stroke that took her in her sleep. And just like that, the garden we loved so much became a place I couldn't bear to visit, because all I could see was the empty chair where I should have been. I missed my own life while trying to keep everything in order. I traded presence for productivity. I chose my schedule over my soul. That wasn't the only time. I skipped birthdays because of deadlines. I stayed in relationships that drained me because they made sense on paper. I avoided conversations that could have brought healing because they felt too heavy. I spent years cleaning kitchens and organizing closets while my children grew up right in front of me, learning more from my absence than my presence. It's a quiet kind of heartbreak, the one that comes not from tragedy, but from distraction. From the million tiny moments we let slip away because we assume there will be more. More time, more chances, more days. But there won't always be more. Sometimes all we get is the invitation, and the choice to say yes or no. Looking back, the greatest loss wasn't the time itself. It was the aliveness. I left untouched. The laughter I missed, the hugs I postponed, the memories I could have made if I had just stepped out of the shoulds and into the now. I was so busy trying to do life right that I forgot to actually live it. So if you're listening and feel like you're always rushing, always rearranging your joy to fit someone else's priority, I beg you to pause. Go visit the person who loves you. Say the thing you've been holding in. Sit in the sunlight without guilt. Burn the fancy candle. Dance in the kitchen even if the dishes are piled high, because one day the ordinary will be gone, and you'll miss it like oxygen. Don't wait for loss to teach you the value of presence. Learn it now. Live it now. Or you may wake up one day, like I did, and realize you were so focused on managing your life, you forgot to feel it. It's strange how the body speaks before the mind is ready to listen. Long before I admitted anything out loud, my soul was already trying to get my attention. There were signs, not the big dramatic ones, but quiet nudges. The way my chest tightened every time I said yes when I meant no. The way my shoulders stayed tense, even in silence. The nights I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to name the ache in my chest, but knowing something was wrong. I told myself I was just tired, just busy, just being a good wife, a good mother, a good woman. But deep down, I was disappearing, little by little, decision by decision. You don't lose yourself all at once. It's a slow fading, a forgetting. First, you forget what makes you laugh. Then, you forget what you used to dream about. Then, one day, you look in the mirror and the person staring back feels like a stranger wearing your skin. That's what happened to me. I kept pushing through, ignoring the whispers until my soul started to raise its voice. My joy dimmed. My energy dropped. And still, I kept going because the world applauds the ones who endure. But endurance without truth is not strength. It's survival. I remember one afternoon, I was folding towels, something so ordinary, and I just stopped. Mid-fold. I looked down at my hands and didn't recognize them. Wrinkled, tired, overused. And I thought, what have I done with you? Not just my hands, but my life. I had spent decades doing everything right, and yet, something inside me was begging to be heard. I had ignored the signs, the way I lit up when I wrote, but stopped writing because it wasn't practical. The way I longed for silence, but filled every moment with noise. The way I smiled in photos, but felt empty inside. These weren't coincidences. They were symptoms. My soul had been speaking. I had just stopped listening. The longer you ignore yourself, the louder the cost becomes. Your body will speak. Your mind will drift. Your spirit will ache. And one day, it will be too loud to silence. That's what happened to me. I didn't have a breakdown. I had a breaking open. And in that breaking, I realized how many years I had lived on autopilot, functioning but not feeling, giving but not receiving, existing but not truly being alive. If any part of you feels heavy right now, pay attention. If you're doing everything right but still feel wrong, listen. That feeling isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your soul isn't broken, it's calling, asking for your attention, begging for your return. Please, don't wait until your body starts trembling, your laughter becomes rare, and your days blur into each other. Don't wait for the breakdown. Learn to listen now. The earlier you respond to your soul's whispers, the more of your life you'll actually get to live. There's a kind of love that feels like warmth, soft, steady, rooted in truth. And then there's the kind I mistook for love for most of my life, the one built on fear. I didn't see it that way back then. I called it devotion, commitment, loyalty. I stayed in relationships that drained me because I thought leaving made me selfish. I forgave things that cut deep because I thought it was noble. I kept quiet to keep the peace. I bent until my back ached, convinced that love meant enduring anything, even when it cost me parts of myself. But it wasn't love. Not really. It was fear of being alone, of disappointing people, of not being enough to be chosen just as I was. I believed, somewhere deep down, that if I stopped trying so hard, I'd be left behind. That if I said no, they'd walk away. That if I stopped proving my worth, I'd be forgotten. So I gave everything. Time, energy, pieces of myself I'll never get back. I stayed when I should have left. I softened my voice, then erased it altogether. I thought I was being loving, but I was really just afraid. Afraid of silence. Afraid of the quiet that comes after someone leaves. Afraid that if I sat with myself too long, I'd have to face the truth. That I didn't believe I was worthy of being loved without sacrificing something in return. And that's the hardest part to admit. That the person I needed love from the most was me. I didn't grow up learning how to love myself. I learned how to serve, to please, to accommodate. I learned how to read moods in a room like maps, to shrink when others needed space, to anticipate needs before they were spoken. I called it intuition, but now I see it was survival. And survival isn't love. It's fear wearing a familiar face. I wish someone had told me earlier that love doesn't demand the loss of self. That real love holds space for your voice, your boundaries, your growth. That love doesn't punish you for resting, that it doesn't require your silence to feel safe. Looking back, I can see how often I confused being wanted with being valued, how I equated being needed with being loved. But I was filling other people's cups while mine ran dry, and eventually, I forgot the taste of joy. So if you're in something that constantly takes but never fills, ask yourself gently, is this love or is this fear? Is this comfort or is it the absence of being alone? Are you staying because it's right or because it's familiar? I didn't ask myself those questions soon enough, but you still can. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You don't have to disappear to be chosen. And real love, the kind that heals, the kind that holds, will never ask you to become smaller just to stay. I used to think staying quiet was a virtue. That humility meant holding my tongue. That strength looked like smiling through discomfort, like letting others speak louder, take up more space, decide the direction of things while I folded myself neatly into the background. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to seem difficult. So I became agreeable, accommodating, polite. And somewhere along the way, I confused silence with peace. But they are not the same. What I told myself was humility was, in truth, the fear of being seen, and possibly rejected. I didn't want to rock the boat, so I swallowed my opinions. I didn't want to upset anyone, so I dimmed my light. I believed that speaking up was selfish, that asking for more was greedy. And each time I silenced myself, I called it grace. I thought I was being kind. But kindness without truth is just quiet suffering. There were times I wanted to say, "That hurt me," but I smiled instead. Times I wanted to say, "I'm not okay," but I said, "I'm fine." I told myself it wasn't worth the trouble, that it would pass, that I was strong enough to hold it in, and people admired me for it. They called me easygoing, gentle, patient. But they didn't see the ache building inside, the weight of everything I never said pressing harder on my chest with each passing year. Eventually, I lost my voice without even realizing it. I couldn't remember what I liked anymore, couldn't articulate what I needed. I became a mirror, reflecting everyone else, but unable to see myself, and no one noticed because I never let them. That's the danger of always being the strong one. People forget you're human. They assume you don't need help, don't have limits, don't carry pain. And you keep performing strength until one day you're exhausted, not just physically, but spiritually. I wish I had learned sooner that humility doesn't mean erasing yourself. That there's power in softness, yes, but only when it's honest. That speaking up isn't arrogance. It's presence. It's saying, I exist too. That my feelings weren't inconveniences. They were signals. That being quiet when I had something true to say wasn't humble. It was fear. If you've been shrinking for peace, for love, for acceptance, let me be the one to tell you. Your voice matters. Even if it shakes, even if it's messy, even if it disrupts the comfort of others. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't have to disappear to be loved. Let them hear you. Let yourself hear you. Because when you finally begin to speak, truly speak, the healing begins. Not just for you, but for everyone who has forgotten what their own voice sounds like too. There's a kind of grief that arrives long before death. A quiet, creeping grief that settles in when you begin to realize life isn't infinite. That the clock has always been ticking, even when you weren't paying attention. I remember the first time I truly felt it. I wasn't sick or in pain. I was just sitting in my garden, watching the wind move through the trees, when a thought rose up from somewhere deep inside. There are fewer springs ahead of me than behind. And just like that, the world changed. Everything became sharper. The colors, the sounds, the smallness of a bird hopping across the grass. I noticed things I'd overlooked for years. The chipped teacup I never threw away, the way the sunlight hit the floorboards in the afternoon, the smell of the lemon soap my mother once used. And I cried. Not from sadness, but from a kind of sacred awareness. I was still here, but I wouldn't always be. And that truth wrapped itself around everything. You start to grieve your own presence in the world. The future moments you know you won't witness. The milestones you'll miss. The people you'll leave behind, wondering if they truly understood how much you loved them. It's not morbid. It's real. And strangely, it's also beautiful. Because once you realize your time is limited, every ordinary moment becomes holy. I used to rush through life. I filled my days with tasks, lists, appointments. I thought being busy meant I was living fully. But now, I see how much I missed. The quiet breakfasts, the silly conversations, the way someone's eyes soften when they talk about something they love. Those are the things I hold on to now. Not the accomplishments, not the checklists, the moments, the connections, the stillness. And I think about the people I love. Will they remember how I laughed until I wheezed when the dog knocked over the vase? Will they remember the smell of my cookies, the way I hummed while folding laundry, the late-night talks we had about nothing and everything? I hope they do. Because those are the pieces of me that mattered. So often, we wait until the end to start noticing life. We wait for the diagnosis, the scare, the loss, and only then do we start paying attention. But life is asking us to notice now. To look at the people in front of us and see them. To look at ourselves and say, I'm still here, and that means something. If you're lucky enough to still have time, don't waste it trying to be perfect. Be present. Sit with people. Tell them you love them, not in passing, but like you mean it. Laugh loudly, cry openly, hug longer, take photos of the mundane. Write down the stories you've told 1,000 times. One day, they'll matter more than you know. I am still here, but I won't always be. And that truth doesn't scare me anymore. It grounds me. It reminds me that every breath is a gift, and that the best way to say goodbye is to live the rest of your life as if it's a thank you. No one noticed the moment I broke, not even me at first. That's how quiet certain mistakes can be, how invisible they remain until years have passed, and you find yourself tracing a line backward, realizing how one single choice changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors, no betrayal, just a decision made in silence, one that felt right because it was expected, not because it was mine. It happened when I was 37. I had a chance to leave the job that drained me, to pursue something that lit a fire in me, something I had dreamed about since I was young, teaching. I had been offered a position at a small school in a nearby town, a place that felt like home the minute I stepped inside. The children's laughter echoed in the halls. The windows let in golden light. It felt alive, real. But the timing wasn't convenient. The commute would be harder. My husband didn't think it was practical, and so I said no. I told myself I was being wise, that I'd get another opportunity, that dreams weren't supposed to feel this inconvenient. But the truth is, that moment passed, and it never returned. I stayed in that cold office, watching the years pile up like forgotten letters in a drawer. And somewhere along the way, a part of me stopped growing. No one blamed me. No one questioned the choice. From the outside, it looked like I had done the sensible thing. But inside, I carried that unspoken grief like a quiet passenger. It would whisper in the back of my mind during long commutes or when I saw children playing. It showed up in the way I envied people who had the courage to chase the inconvenient. And what I've come to learn is this: not all mistakes are loud. Some are subtle, choices that go unnoticed by the world but echo inside us forever. The job you didn't take, the person you didn't call, the boundaries you didn't set, the parts of yourself you kept locked away because they didn't fit the narrative others had for you. It took me decades to say the words, "That was a mistake." And not because I wanted to dwell on it, but because naming it gave me peace. It was mine, mine to carry and mine to release. I stopped blaming time, or people, or circumstance. I forgave the version of me who was just trying to do the right thing. And then, finally, I started speaking it out loud. Not as regret, but as a warning. A soft lantern for those coming up behind me. So if you're standing at a crossroads, wondering if the hard, inconvenient choice is worth it, please listen to the ache inside you. The one that doesn't shout, but nudges. The one that says, "This matters to you," because one day you'll look back, and the things that will stay with you won't be the easy roads, but the ones you didn't dare take. And trust me, that silence, the one you feel when you wonder, what if I had just said yes? It doesn't fade. It settles, quiet, deep, permanent, until you finally decide you don't want to add any more of those kinds of mistakes to your story. As I grew older, I realized that some of the deepest wounds don't come from what others did to us, but from what we told ourselves in the silence that followed. The stories we wrote in our own minds, the harsh judgments whispered in the quiet of the night, the ways we became our own jailers long after the door was left open. When I was young, I believed I had to be perfect to be loved, that any sign of weakness would be seen as failure. So I learned to smile through shame. I learned to fix my hair and keep my chin up, even when I felt like falling apart inside. I blamed myself for things that were never mine to carry. The mood of a parent, the distance of a partner, the failure of something I had tried my best to hold together. And over the years, that blame hardened into something crueler: self-rejection. I never spoke it out loud, but it lived in the way I criticized myself for aging, for gaining weight, for forgetting things. It lived in the way I said I'm sorry for simply existing in space. It lived in how I belittled my own desires, how I laughed off my own pain, how I made room for everyone else and called that strength. But now, nearing the end, I see that strength without softness becomes a cage. And I've spent too many years locked inside one of my own making. It took nearly a lifetime to learn that I didn't have to earn my worth. That love, real love, is not conditional upon perfection. That no part of me needed to be hidden to be safe. I wish someone had told me, you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to be seen, not just when you're strong, but especially when you're not. We don't talk enough about the lies we inherit and repeat to ourselves. Lies like, you're too much, you're not enough, you're difficult to love. These lies take root in the places where no one ever poured truth. And the only way to uproot them is to begin saying things out loud, even if they tremble on your tongue. I started small. I looked in the mirror and said, you're doing your best. I wrote down memories that hurt and told myself, you survived this. I sat in the quiet and reminded my heart, you are not broken. And slowly, something began to shift. I didn't become confident overnight, but I did become honest. And honesty with yourself, with your past, with the stories you've clung to, that's where the healing begins. So if you've been cruel to yourself, if your inner voice is one you wouldn't dare use on a friend, I ask you gently, who taught you to speak that way to yourself? And why are you still listening? Change the script. You deserve kindness, especially from yourself. Don't wait until your hair turns silver to believe you're enough as you are. Say it now. Say it often. Let your voice be the one that saves you this time. I've lived through wars, through births and burials, through decades that reshaped the world. And yet, the most profound battles I ever fought were the quiet ones, the ones that took place inside my own heart. Not against enemies, but against endings I didn't want to face. You see, no one teaches you how to say goodbye to a version of yourself that will never return. I used to be quick on my feet, my mind sharp like a polished knife. I remembered names, birthdays, every detail of a loved one's face. I used to dance in the kitchen just because the radio played a song I knew. I used to remember what it felt like to run, really run, with air filling my lungs and wind brushing my skin. And slowly, almost silently, those pieces began to fade. It didn't happen all at once. First came the forgetting. I'd go into a room and forget why I was there. I'd start a sentence and lose the ending. I laughed it off. Senior moment, I'd say. Then came the physical shifts. My knees didn't bend the same. My hands started trembling when I held my coffee. My body became unfamiliar territory, and with each change, a tiny farewell whispered itself into my bones. People talk about aging like it's only about wrinkles or back pain, but no one tells you how painful it is to feel yourself vanishing from your own life. To watch the woman you've always been slip slowly into memory, replaced by someone slower, quieter, more forgetful, and sometimes less seen. But here's what I've learned. Mourning those lost versions of yourself is not weakness, it's love. It means you cherished those moments. It means you remember being alive in them. And it means you're human. I've had to learn how to make peace with the woman I am now. Not as a lesser version of who I was, but as someone who still matters. Someone who still has something to give, even if it's not in the same way as before. I may not move quickly, but I listen more deeply. I may forget things, but I remember what truly matters. I may not dance much anymore, but when I close my eyes, I can still feel the rhythm, and that too is a kind of grace. So if you're young and moving fast through life, I ask you to notice who you are right now. Love her. Celebrate her. Don't wait until you're saying goodbye to her to realize how precious she is. And if you're older, like me, and grieving the girl you once were, hold her hand gently. Tell her thank you, and let her rest. Because the beauty of life isn't just in becoming, it's in remembering, in honoring, in knowing that every version of you was real, was worthy, and was deeply, deeply loved. Even if you didn't know it at the time. There's one last thing I want to say, and I hope you don't brush it off just because it's quiet. Because sometimes the softest truths are the ones that live the longest inside us. Here it is. You are not promised forever. None of us are. And while that may sound heavy, to me, it's become the most liberating truth I've ever held. I spent too many years believing I had time to fix what was broken, time to say what I never had the courage to, time to slow down and enjoy what I rushed through. But now, with most of my time behind me, I can tell you with clarity, time doesn't wait. It slips through fingers like dust, like light, like breath. 1 minute you're making plans, and the next, you're looking back on decades and wondering where it all went. I don't say this to scare you. I say it so you'll wake up, so you'll stop postponing the things that matter. Forgiveness, rest, joy, saying I love you, saying I'm sorry, taking a day off to just sit in the sun and feel your heartbeat. Answering that message, leaving that situation that's been breaking your spirit, starting the thing you've been too afraid to begin, saying the truth, finally, even if your voice shakes when you say it. You will not regret loving people harder. You will not regret taking up space in your own life. You will not regret choosing peace, even if it confuses people who benefited from your chaos. But you will regret silencing yourself. You will regret waiting. You will regret trying to earn the love that should have been freely given. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day and realize you lived your entire life for everyone but yourself. Don't let that happen to you. I'm saying goodbye soon. I can feel it. My body is quieter, my sleep is heavier, and the memories are starting to blur like watercolors left in the rain. But my soul is awake, clear, at peace. And I want that for you too, long before you ever get here. So take this as a gift. A small, trembling gift from an old woman who has nothing left to prove and only truth left to give. Live with intention, speak with honesty, rest without guilt, be kind without shrinking, and above all, stop waiting. The life you want isn't hiding in the future. It's right here, in the messy, beautiful now. And if no one has told you lately, you are worth it. All of it. Right now. As you are. No more proving. No more pretending. Just you, awake and alive. That's enough. That's always been enough. If something in her words touched your heart, don't let it fade into silence. Click like to let her voice echo a little longer. Subscribe if you believe these stories still matter. The soft ones, the wise ones, the ones we forget to hear until it's too late. Because sometimes what saves us isn't loud. It's a whisper from someone who's almost gone, asking us to live better before we run out of time too.